Hi, thanks for coming. I'm Shruti Srinivasa Ragavan from Microsoft Research, and this talk is about how people comprehend spreadsheets. Millions of spreadsheet users must read and comprehend spreadsheets as part of various activities to make decisions, to debug their spreadsheets, for reviewing, and even to enter data. But studies show that understanding spreadsheets can be tedious and error prone. In fact, a study with managers showed that misinterpreting spreadsheets is one of the top five most frequent kinds of errors. Erroneous comprehension could lead not just to poor decisions and financial losses, they could even be the root cause for other kinds of spreadsheet errors, such as data errors and formula errors. Unfortunately, we do not know a lot about spreadsheet comprehension and how these comprehension errors occur. We don't even know a whole lot about how people comprehend spreadsheets today. And if we do not know what happens today, we cannot build tools to support those activities better. And so, we set out to answer the question, how do people comprehend spreadsheets today? What information do they need? What activities do they engage in? What strategies do they adopt to comprehend their spreadsheets? Where are the pain points and where do these errors come from? In order to answer these questions, we conducted a user study. We recruited 15 participants. Each of these participants had received a spreadsheet from a colleague, and now they had to understand and work with that spreadsheet in order to accomplish a job task. We simply observed participants working on these job tasks. We also asked them to think out aloud. We then qualitatively analyzed participants' task videos in small 20-second segments. We looked at the activities they engaged in, the information they were seeking, the tactics and strategies they adopted, their pain points, and so on. And so we ended up with a lot of qualitative, rich, fine-grained data from the real world. Coming to results, here are the top few things that we want you to take away from this talk. The first thing is that spreadsheet comprehension is a lot more than just formula comprehension. Now, prior work has taken the view that spreadsheets are code, and so when it comes to spreadsheet comprehension, they've mostly looked at difficulties around understanding formulas. In our study also, participants had to understand formulas and face difficulties doing so. But we also saw spreadsheets where there were no formulas at all, and even then participants had a hard time understanding those spreadsheets. So they had difficulty understanding the data, they had difficulties understanding and interpreting and comparing charts. There were a whole lot of other things that were hidden away. So there were data validation rules, conditional formatting rules, and even just all the formatting that was applied to a cell. So when we think about spreadsheet comprehension, we need to think about all these activities and not just about formulas. The second thing is that participants spent 40% of their time seeking additional information needed to understand their spreadsheet. A lot of the time, people needed extra things to understand their spreadsheet, but that information was not available in context. And so they had to navigate away from their current context to a different part of the spreadsheet or even outside to the web or to emails, gather those pieces of information, and then come back and continue. Now, such context switches are not just productivity loss, but we saw that they were also sources of errors. The third thing is about guessing and going back to the author. A lot of the time, when people were looking for information to understand the spreadsheet, they did not always find them. And so they resorted to guessing how the spreadsheet worked. Sometimes they framed hypotheses and they were able to test them in some form. For example, I think this is how it is calculated, and then they would try it out, see if the numbers match, and then that would work. But other times they were not able to do that, and so they just went on with unverified guesses. So such guesses are a problem. They could be incorrect, and the comprehension could be incorrect too. Another thing was that when people did not have the information and they were not even able to make the right kinds of guesses, they decided to go back to the spreadsheet's author. Now, authors were not always available in time, and so that was another case of productivity loss. So we need to think about these missing information problems in order to help users with spreadsheet comprehension. Finally, while it's very tempting to say all these comprehension difficulties are because the spreadsheets were not built very well, it was not the case. In all the spreadsheets that we saw, there were some form of good layout, colors, documentation, all the best practices that are recommended to build good spreadsheets. So participants' comprehend difficulties were not because of the author's efforts, but despite all that the author did to make the spreadsheets more readable. In the paper, we make some arguments for why this might be the case and what we could do about it, including building tools to make some of the things like layouts and colors easy so that users could focus on other kinds of things while writing their spreadsheets. These are some of the other results that we discuss in the paper. Thanks for listening.